And I've not heard anybody else say that, or I haven't seen that anywhere else.
Probably because you're one of the few people that is educated in
What gives a
We are here with a new arc on Foreplay, and that arc is Hidden Gems. And we couldn't discuss which films were in this because we polled you, our loving audience, about which films that we mention critically, not that you want us to do, that we mention a lot that we haven't done on the show, that you found intriguing from those mentions, and also that we thought wouldn't fit into other future arcs, at least not soon, because we have a huge document where we keep a bunch of arc ideas. And so some of the things that you selected, like Strange Days was one of them, that will actually be in our next arc, a cyberpunk arc that's coming up. So you don't have to worry about that. We were already planning on doing that. But this arc was an opportunity to kind of see which films were brought up the most. And so we have picked The Fountain for today, which is the one that was brought up probably the most out of any of the films across your comments on YouTube, social media, etc. The other films that we are going to be doing for this arc are The Green Knight second. That was another very popular one. Third will be Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And fourth will be David Cronenberg's Naked Lunch, which, by the way, not many people wanted that much, but we have talked about it. And also, we haven't done Cronenberg. And also, that definitely is not going in an arc that isn't David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Which probably will happen at some point.
You wouldn't even put it in a Cronenberg arc, honestly.
Probably not.
Because like it's probably middle of the pack in terms of his films. So it's perfect. Tailor-made for this arc. And remember, the arc was what we've talked about, not what you think would be good for us to review. Two separate arcs. Right?
And that arc may happen in the future, by the way. We will. Yes, it will actually be quite funny to let you troll us in the way that we also troll each other. So I'm not averse to doing that. But there were a lot of other films that came up. So we did listen to you. There were things like Synecdoche, New York. Almost certainly we will do a Kaufman arc at some point, and we would have to do that one 100%. What else? Manhunter. Probably a series.
Philip Seymour Hoffman one. I'm not doubt there'll be an arc for that.
For sure. Yeah. There were just a lot of places we could put Synecdoche, New York. Perfect Blue. We will do like a prestige anime arc. We all want to do more Satoshi Kon. That's not a big question. Manhunter, part of a serial killer arc potentially. You guys mentioned a lot more of them. Sorcerer came up a lot. That probably is going to get in an arc at some point in time in some way. Infernal Affairs, part of a remake arc that we've been discussing where we would do Infernal Affairs and then The Departed. That would actually be an 8-episode arc potentially, because we'd have to hit the original and the remake of 4 different films effectively. But that would certainly be in there. So there were a lot of places. I mean, Hong Kong cinema also for Infernal Affairs. There's a lot of places some of these other films will probably go in the future. So the Hidden Gems arc was ones that we both mentioned and didn't think would easily fit into other arcs potentially. So there you go.
I'll also say for this episode, The Fountain, that dickhead in the YouTube comments who triggered me off the face of the earth, he's getting his wish this episode because this is Duncan's probably one of his favorite movies, definitely top 5 favorite movies for Duncan. It was his choice, and Monty obviously is up in all that Mayan stuff. And has a really cool anecdote. So I'm just sitting back this episode.
I wondered where he was going out.
I'm freewheeling.
Richard's just a passenger in the space tree ship heading towards Xibalba.
Correct. Yes, supernova. That is this podcast.
Unfortunately, yes, I know far too much about Mayan mythology, which we will talk about, and also interesting historical anecdotes about some of this.
And yet,
stuff.
When I try and give you ayahuasca, Monty, you say no thanks.
When did I say? First off, I would not say no thanks.
I know you would.
Like, I'm just about to operate this heavy material. I go, listen, you pussy.
First off, I would not say no thanks. In fact, that's
everyone knows shamanic drugs and peer pressure go together. Like, you know.
It's one of the things that's been on the old list. A little trip to Peru in my future, perhaps, just hasn't happened yet. But yes,
I recommend.
Yeah. So anyway, we are here with The Fountain. It's actually our first Aronofsky film, interestingly. Although I will say, speaking of the possible remake arc, Perfect Blue and Black Swan may be in the remake arc, because that's a very interesting duo of movies to talk about. But Aronofsky, is pretty early on in his career. He had a couple, Pi, Requiem for a Dream had come out, I believe, at this point. And so he was kind of a very promising indie director. But what's interesting about where this movie came from was his talent had started to get recognized. And so this was supposed to be like a big budget film, big fight scenes, army versus army. They were going to build a pyramid. Brad Pitt was supposed to star in this movie until over 2 years later, he had creative differences and actually left to go do Troy, which we have also reviewed on this channel. So this left Aronofsky like pretty depressed because he had spent millions of dollars of the studio's money developing this film. And he kind of went on a spiritual quest across India and China after this, apparently. So he went on some solo travels, did a bunch of soul searching, and apparently realized that he could salvage this film by turning it into a smaller budget movie. And I think what's remarkable about this film is it's only 96 minutes long, which is, I had forgotten how short it is.
Doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. It feels like a 3-hour movie or something, doesn't it?
And you can see how easily this could have been a 3-hour movie. And I think one of the interesting what ifs is like, what would have been the director's cut of this? What was the original vision of this? Because there's so much going on and you could easily see it being 3 hours. And yet it tells a very poignant story in this pretty brief runtime, and is very fantastical. And I will say about this movie, I love this movie, but people are going to bounce off this movie hard. This is non-linear storytelling, 3 different stories, questions of reincarnation. Some people will think this is very pretentious. Some people will think this is very melodramatic, overwrought. And some people are just going to super vibe with this movie. There's not really a lot of in between. I don't think anybody comes to the Fountain and says it was okay. It's like you either love it or you just can't.
I'll set Duncan up because one of the things that I think has plagued this movie is this myth that it is difficult to decipher and follow because of the 3 separate timelines. The one being the fiction of her book, 2 being the present day of her battling cancer and him working, trying to find some cure, and the 3rd being a future version of him drifting through space to the star she explicitly explicitly references.
It could also be in his mind, which we'll discuss.
And look, there are only 2 ways to interpret the movie, which is why I was going to let Duncan jump in, and that is that you either think the present and the real is her battling the disease and him working to find the cure, or the present and the real is him drifting through space, having successfully experimented on the tree of life and taking the tree that we see him plant at the end of the movie to its final resting place. There are no other interpretations of the movie, and that's why I'm really perplexed.
I think there's a third one, which is that these are 3 different reincarnations of Hugh Jackman's character in different timelines.
Yeah.
No, here's the problem. I think that's what people who are incredibly literalist and have no time for dream logic will think, Monty. They'll think it's some sort of like ham-fisted 3-in-1 movies. And by the way, as famously I've mentioned, probably when I've referenced this movie on this show many times, they definitely did make a movie trailer I remember seeing that was very like that, as though it was like, whatever year, 1500. 1995, like it almost was like someone made it like it was a sci-fi mixed with a thing. Whereas to me, actually, those are just like window dressing to tell the story. Like I will say the same thing. Right? What another interesting detail also, Monty, is in the downtime when he couldn't make this movie, he actually pulled a John Arowski and made a comic instead. But then the movie got made a few years later. The comic actually is slightly different, has some slightly different elements to how the story plays out that he changed in the script. So no, the thing I would say about this is that is the number one complaint that people give, Richard, that I can't understand. There's a very similar one they do to one of my other favourites, actually also happens to feature Hugh Jackman, which is The Prestige. People actually say the plot doesn't make sense, which is like, of all the complaints, I think that's actually the worst one. Like, I could understand any other complaint. You didn't like this performance. Maybe you think the mechanisms doesn't work or whatever. Like, but the idea the plot didn't make sense in The Prestige is mental. Because I think that and this film are fabulously scripted films. Like, one of the best things is, like Monty's saying, is it has the feel of being a 3-hour epic film, not least because it's one of those films that does the, like, actually, if you know the comic book writing style of Alan Moore, it reminds me of that. Every single detail is gradually building into what the payoff is going to be at the end. So I would say, if you don't like the payoff at the end, by the way, or you find the process excruciating, yeah, it ain't the film for you. I agree, Monty. Actually, people, it's not they don't just dislike, people straight bounce off this film, think it's whack, or as you say, they think it's pretentious, which I listen, obviously people have different opinions, but I find that mad too, because I find this one of the, like, most emotionally powerful movies I've ever seen. I think it's fucking unbelievable. Like, the funny thing is, when I first watched it as a young man, by the way, I'll give you my, like, intro to this film, that's why it makes sense, is I'd actually seen in order Pie and then Requiem for a Dream, and I think this is actually one of the first people I sort of figured out it's the same director, and it was following the story. Like, oh, his next film's gonna have bloody Brad Pitt in. Like, what the hell? That's a bit of an out of nowhere one. Because as you say, those were like classic indie films. Like, if you told someone about Pie, most people never saw it back then. Even though, if you think about, like, the vein of sort of sci-fi mixed with indie film, people would have loved that back then. That could have been a blockbuster. It's a mega film. Also, it's a brilliant directorial debut to show off all his skills. It's all like, basically, it's all like media shit, isn't it? Like music and fast cuts and cool energy, you know. Requiem for a Dream is just a super fucking, very incredibly dark dystopian type film, which these could all be self-contained films. And then you come to this, which you can tell this is his chance. Like you're saying, it's not just an indie film anymore. He's got the fucking budget, he's got the money for graphics, and he's got some, in theory, shit hot actors. But what's funny is I actually think this is a great example. You could even argue it ends up mirroring the theme of the film, that the film had to die with Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett as, like, the giant budget movie to instead be reborn as a way more efficiently made movie. Which, remember, if you didn't know that story and you watched this film, you would never know they skimmed on anything. The graphics have held up like a motherfucker. Like, they've killed it completely. All the computer graphics somehow aren't over the top to a way that, like, again, the classic example, you go watch the Matrix the sequels, which must have had 5 times the budget. They look way worse on the fucking action scenes where people are all, like, going computer mode. They do a really good job with it on this. And to me, it's super tightly scripted. It's just that listen, it is overwrought, but intentionally so. Like, it's like the topic you're dealing with is so heavy that essentially, without giving you the spoiler, it's all about, like, it reaching the maximum heaviness and then suddenly breaking through and then being a fucking epic crescendo. I think has one of the best endings ever. And I find that whole thing of the 3 different put it this way, I'll resolve that quickly for you now. To me, the one where he's, like, in space doing fucking yoga and waiting to go to the Jabalba at the end of time or whatever, I saw that as, like, not a literal thing. Like, I think it's in his mind. To me, I don't think because he got so mad his wife died, he actually experimented on that thing. I mean, remember, the story of it being the tree of life is her story. That's not actually real. Like, we just make that connection because it's conveniently right there with what they're showing us. The idea it's a tree from South America, so did they? You know, and then it's had this miraculous initial effects on a monkey. We draw that assumption. So, being as far as I can tell in the real world, that isn't actually the tree of life that was, like, from some fucking Mayan shit. To me, this is almost just like an idealized version of what would happen to that person if he accomplished his goal. He wants to kill death, remember? Surely one of his mistakes in the film is he thinks death is a disease and is somehow unnecessary to the equation of being alive, whereas surely his wife's epiphany is actually, look, maybe it's not a good thing, but it is literally a necessitated part of the experience of being alive and shows you things like what's beautiful before the end and what was excellent about life. And so to me, this is like, what if he could have accomplished his goal? What if he'd found the way to himself never die and be immortal? Because remember, I think that's maybe subtle about this film is the film's presented as he just can't handle his wife dying. He also makes it quite clear that he will not die as well. Like, that's one of his big epiphanies, is that he is going to die. That's why he actually sort of has a piece at the end of the film before the crescendo.
Death is a disease. It's like any other. And there's a cure. A cure. And I will find it.
Hey guys, as usual, Foreplay is brought to you by Raycon. I know if I was Hugh Jackman, trapped in a bubble in space for God knows how long with a tree, I might want some decent headphones so I would have something to do besides tattoo myself and meditate. If you're looking for some new headphones, I would recommend picking up some Raycons. These are their new essential open earbuds. And what they do is they actually wrap around your ear. They're very secure. I've taken them to the gym, and they sit on the outside, so nothing goes into your ear canal. They still provide great sound, and they're super secure, so you don't have to worry about them falling off. So if you like headphones, but you don't want ones that go in your ears, the essential open earbuds might be for you. But Raycon also has a variety of other products. I'm a particular fan of their everyday earbuds. They have active noise cancellation. I've used them personally on planes, on the subway. They cancel out sound very, very well. And they also have awareness mode. So if you need to hear, you can just click it over using the button on the everyday earbuds, and you'll be able to be reconnected with the environment around you. They're significantly cheaper than other headphones because they sell direct to you. So if you want premium features, but you may not want that premium price, I would check out Raycon 100%. They've had over 3 million customers, and if you don't like them for whatever reason, they have a 30-day guarantee. They also feature over-the-ear headphones if you want something more complete. They have so many, many different options. So you guys can head on over to buyraycon.com/4playopen, FOURPLAY open, to get 20% off site-wide. Thank you very much to Raycon for sponsoring us here on 4Play.
So to me, what if there was a guy like that? Let's imagine he could accomplish all his goals. He can live forever. He can take this magical tree with him, and he can ascend to this place where you get to get immortal. It's immortal life. To me, that's an idealized notion. You know, it's not really supposed to be like this is like 2001, and that's really him going through like a fucking wormhole or something. You know, to me, I think that. By the way, I will say I do think Aronofsky was thinking of films like that though when he's drawing this imagery though. But yeah, so to me, I can see why people bounce off it. But I don't get it. All of it just vibes super hard for me.
There's also the version where it is actually him writing the end of the book.
Yes.
So for example, he's told to finish the book after his wife dies, and she says when they're outside looking at the nebula through the telescope, she says she's explaining the book to him, and she says it starts in Spain, but it ends there, and she points to the nebula.
Yes.
So it could be that either she had written that part and he was finishing it, or he was taking her ideas and what she told him about where it ends and then writing that book. Writing it.
Also, notice how the character, when he is up there, he isn't just concerned with all that. It's essentially someone just constantly living the regrets and thoughts of those little memories that come into your mind, and you think of this happening, this happening. Like, to me, the fact that that's what plays out in that dimension the whole time, and the fact that the tree essentially becomes like her, and even the way the hair's on the edge of you, like that would all be a bit weird if it was a real literal future and he's just going towards the stars and he's already achieved enlightenment, but also like immortal, like, you know what I mean? Like, I find the literalist interpretation is the one that makes the least sense.
Yeah. So let me summarize this movie real quick, and then we'll get into it. The summary won't take long because, frankly, this is just more of an experience. It just kind of drops you into space sphere tree and him doing Tai Chi against the backdrop of the stars.
It is an audacious.
Do you like that it's not explained though? I think that's a bold decision.
It is an audacious start to the movie, and again, I think one of the reasons people struggle with connecting the timelines is because it quite literally starts in the Mayan timeline, which we later find out is a fiction, and then it segues into bald yoga man in space.
Yep.
And we don't have anything grounding us in reality for like 8 minutes.
Here's the thing. Think about this. Imagine they
amazing.
cut to a scene where, you know, a therapist's going, and this is, imagine that you're out. That would ruin, to me, that would collapse some of the thing. Like, to me, this is one of the best examples of a film for me where I agree, Monty, it's a vibe. You just get, if you get the vibe intuitively, you'll think this is brilliant and it's genius the way it's done. But I could see why someone could go, what's that supposed to be?
Right. Yeah. So like we keep saying, there are 3 timelines here, one of which happens in the 1500s during the Spanish Inquisition. So this is post-discovery of the New World. And there's 3 Hugh Jackmans, okay? One Hugh Jackman is Conquistador Hugh Jackman named Tomas. Then there's present-day neurosurgeon Hugh Jackman, whose name is Tommy. And then there is future / inside his own mind Hugh Jackman in the spaceship, and that is Tom, okay? Or Space Tom, whatever you want to call him, Major Tom.
T0M.
T0M.
Correct.
3 is good.
They
So
call it, sad thing is they'd actually call it that, like a future Hollywood production, wouldn't they? I know.
So basically what happens is these 3 narratives are going on. You're just dropped into it. You don't really ever get the explanation about how they are interacting, except for the fact that they all have Rachel Weisz and Hugh Jackman in them. So it's the same actors, which is why there even if it isn't a literal rebirth, there is clearly a theme of reincarnation in this, because it also mixes spiritual systems of Catholicism or Christianity with the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life, Buddhism, and Eastern spiritual traditions, which we see in Space Tom later on, and then Mayan indigenous religions. So basically, in the present timeline, Izzy, who is Tommy's wife, is dying of a brain tumor. She has brain cancer, and the neurosurgeon Tommy is trying desperately to save her. She is resigned to her own death, which this entire movie thematically is about the acceptance of death. Full stop. That's what it's about. It's pretty obvious. Then she is writing a book, a novel. The novel is called The Fountain, meaning the fountain of youth. The Fountain is a story about this conquistador, Tomas, who is also played and probably inspired by Hugh Jackman's character. So it was inspired by her husband. He is sent to the New World on a quest to find in the Mayan jungles in the interior of Mexico a special hidden pyramid that contains the Tree of Life. The queen herself is under threat from the Spanish Inquisition. The Inquisition is just a metaphor for the cancer we will get to later. Then there's Space Tom, who is flying towards the Orion Nebula, which in this is called Xibalba. Xibalba is the name of the Mayan underworld. It is not a star. We will get into that. I think there's some very interesting theories about why. I have some interesting theories personally about why Aronofsky would do this. But effectively, what they say about the Orion Nebula is that it is a cloud of gas that is surrounding this dying star. And we find out much later in the film that the purpose of this spaceship with this tree that contains Space Tom in it is that he is trying to go there to basically give life to the tree again and experience resurrection or rebirth. That's basically the entire space narrative. Eventually what happens is that Izzy dies. The surgeon storyline, he had found some bark from a Central American tree, given it to a monkey he was experimenting on who had a brain tumor. It actually de-aged the monkey and cured the brain cancer, but he couldn't get it together in time to save Izzy. Izzy dies anyway, and he then receives a seed from Space Tom in a really cool edit and then plants it in Izzy's grave because Izzy had previously told a story about a tree. A Mayan man had told her that there was this tree planted at his father's grave, and the father became the tree, and then the birds who ate the fruit from the tree, and it's
different version of reincarnation, essentially.
A different version of reincarnation. So this entire movie is just 3 different versions of reincarnation. Oh, also in the Mayan storyline, Tomas actually gets to the pyramid, fights a priest at the end, has a vision of Space Tom. The priest has a vision of Space Tom, who he calls First Father. First Father is a very important Mayan mythological figure, which we'll get into. And then he ends up being a willing sacrifice to the Conquistador. The Conquistador goes to the Tree of Life that's sitting in a pool on the top of the pyramid and then drinks the sap of that tree, and then he dies, but then turns into a bunch of flowers. Like he
basically Prometheus is himself. If everyone knows the beginning of the movie Prometheus, he sort of does that basically.
Yeah, not the god, the movie. But yes, effectively, this is the instant version of the rebirth and reincarnation, although in a different form. So all of the storylines end with some form of rebirth or reincarnation. The space storyline ends with allegedly a supernova. Was it the supernova? Was it the birth of a star? We'll get to that. It then causes the Tree of Life to come back to life. It was dying and flourish again. Whatever happened to Space Tom is unclear. Regular Tommy, the surgeon, he has I would say, spiritual rebirth at the end of this, where he accepts death and learns to kind of live with this process. And then there's a literal kind of decomposition rebirth into a new life which is what the Conquistador Tomas experiences when he drinks the sap of the tree of life. So that's basically the story, but the story is all tied up with deep symbolism, mythological meaning, representations of grief, representations of death, representations of rebirth. So what this is more of I would say it's more of a mythological experience than anything. It operates in mythology logic or dream logic.
Mate, someone like Joseph Campbell would have loved this fucking film.
Yeah, it's
He'd
great.
be all over it, mate. Yeah.
This is it's a movie Jung would love.
Even though it is very much like an ideas film and it's about like some very big ideas in life and experiences that we'll all go through. I also, another thing about this film, as well as the graphics, mate, it just looks fantastic. Like the whole sequence of the Conquistador is fucking, the joke is I would watch a movie about that, mate. It looked mega the way he shot that. Like how dark it all was and how like moody the scenes where it's in Spain with all the fucking Catholic iconography. Even though he's barely in it, that fucking guy who plays
Salamanca.
What's he called? The
Inquisitor.
Inquisitor. That guy looks fucking dope as well.
Right. Yeah,
the ambience of that is fucking baller. Yeah, like he's right on. He's terrifying. Yeah. That's why I agree with Monty. It's a good parallel for the cancer. It's like you can't escape it. It's just taking over your life gradually.
I mean, for me, definitely one of the most. It's held up as one of the most beautiful films like ever committed to cinema, which is like high praise indeed. I mean, everything about this, the recurring visual motifs that are spread out across timelines, different color palettes, because obviously you have the kind of murky grays and muddy color of the Conquistador past, which is deliberate because obviously when the verdant green is bursting forth from the tree of life, it is a direct parallel. It's to create that intensity of color. You have obviously the kind of the white and frosty blues of the present day, obviously winter, very, representative of death, quite classically in literature. And then you have the kind of yellowy, futuristic palette of him drifting through time and space to get to the supernova.
And by the way, one of the coolest parts of this movie is they didn't use any CGI for that. They used macrophotography, which means that they basically put a lens over water and were putting dye and other liquids into the water, and it was creating these like patterns that they were photographing. So all of that gold nova stuff from Xibalba is actually just very, very close-up photography of liquids that they were playing with.
As I say, there had to be some sort of inspiration from 2001 for that sequence, surely.
Yes,
because like it feels like it's kind of almost the spiritual successor to it,
I mean, for me as well, though, I'll say one of the things that I think are brilliantly realized within the three storylines is that man's relationship to nature and how kind of essential it is within the context of like death and life and all there's a reason all of these ancient cultures imbibed certain plants to achieve certain things, had a reverential feeling towards certain types of plants, even biblical allegories. Life starts in a garden. They're looking for the tree of life. The knowledge comes from a tree, which obviously is very, lots of people have gone down this rabbit hole. They say that's symbolic of like an ayahuasca, like a DMT style awakening. And obviously at the end, he is literally taking the tree of life through space, the last remaining tree, but he can exist in his own little ecosystem. What a wonderful idea for a spaceship. Not something technological keeping him alive, not something artificial, but something natural. That it is like he's in a bubble, oxygen, water, it's all there for him, everything he needs. He can imbibe a tiny little piece of bark from the tree of life, and that will sustain him for centuries. As he
this is all just told visually too. There's never an explanation.
And also, I mean, the implications of taking the bark too is that, this is linking the spiritual traditions because it is the Mayan tree, but he's taking it as if it's communion.
Yeah, exactly. Like a wafer on the tongue.
I've noticed they're trying to imply that by him taking it, he's gradually killing the tree too. And so he's in a race. Can he get there in time? Which again is just a metaphor of like the idea that notice a big theme of this. And here's what's funny. When I first watched this film, because I would have only been like, I don't know, what would I have, like 24 or something, like not no, maybe like 23, maybe something like that. I wouldn't be very old when it came out. I remember when I first watched it, I was way more like resonating with the main Tommy character. Like I remember watching it thinking it is a race for him to cure his wife's cancer or something. When I watch it now as an older man, I realize the beauty of the film is like that was folly from day one anyway. Like as the movie shows, look, they make it cinematic. But even if you'd done the breakthrough, there never would have been time to use it on your bloody wife, mate. If anything, actually, one of the messages of that part of the film is he actually becomes kind of a bit fucked up as a doctor, because notice how the first thing he does, Monty, the first breakthrough doesn't affect the tumor. It just de-ages the monkey and gives it all like healing powers. Like, bro, that alone, as they say in the film, like, whoa, stop. We'd just be working on that at this point in time.
You created a miracle.
That would be what the grant would be for. That would be responsible science. Instead, his whole thing's like, right, put that to one side, next thing, load up the next variant. And then look, eventually in this case, they make it so he does find something that actually affects the tumor. But it's quite literally when she just died, though. It's too late. You can't get. And also, to me, the obvious message of this film, which I didn't really pick up as much the first time, I thought this was just part of the tragedy, is his wife basically actually is the wise one the whole time through. She's the one who sort of gets that, like, look, I've had to accept this is already happening. I'm finding a way, by the way, narratively to reinterpret it so it doesn't like destroy my soul and make me think it's going to be terrible. I'm trying to share that with you, but also I'm going to do it as sort of an exercise where you're going to go through telling the story. You're going to, as a result, have to deal with all the different themes, etc. And also, as you see in the film, this is why the future part to me can't be literal, because as Richard says, they cleverly make the future part actually like directly insert itself into our present, but not as just that was a memory. Like, think about it, right? It's that scene they replay over and over again that it starts with, where she comes and says, like, right, it's snowing outside, let's go outside, basically. And the first time he goes no, but then what it shows later when it flashes back is like, obviously the real regret is I should have just gone out then, shouldn't I? When I realized that was the first time I was essentially realizing it was like over. I should have just spent time with my wife before she died. Instead, I spent all the time bloody racing against the clock to do this monkey experiment. And in the end, she died anyway.
Without like trying to make it too real an episode, and we veer into like leaving Las Vegas territory. I will say probably, unfortunately, there's going to be something in our lives, if you haven't already experienced, and I imagine lots of people listening have, in the sense that one of the biggest regrets you have when you lose someone to a terminal illness is the allocation of time and what you do with it. And you know, I've gone through that. I've had someone, you know, that I care about a lot, like, lost to cancer, and I remember being like not emotionally equipped to sort of deal with it, and not wanting to be around it, and almost making a conscious decision to kind of compartmentalize it and put it away. And you end up hugely regretting that, because it's like the true folly is you do think you're going to get more time, or you do think there's going to be like some last minute intervention from the universe is going to come in and save everybody and save the people you care about, and it just doesn't happen. And a lot of people that are dying that get to the acceptance stage in that classical psychological model that people talk about, you know, a lot of people who get to the acceptance stage, they do just tell you, like, look, we want to spend more time, you know, we want to spend time, this is happening, this is real, let's just try and enjoy it as much as we can. A lot of gallows humor, you know, which she injects, like when she notices the wedding rings off. That's all real. I mean, that's like brilliantly observed.
Oh, it is, yeah.
And so yeah, you know, I've been adjacent to that, not with a partner, obviously, but with, like, you know, a parental figure in my life. It's very well observed, and I think,
no, mate, how real is that scene? That scene where she just jokes, like, who is she? Is she a redhead because he hasn't got a ring on? But it like really emotionally hurts him, and then it makes her in response be like super vulnerable. Man, that's like a really fucking authentic scene captured on film there. Normally, you think Hollywood actors are always overacted. I think they fucking nailed some of these.
Is she a redhead?
What? I left in surgery.
If you can't wait, you can't wait. I'm joking.
Make some coffee.
Wait! Sponge. I want you to heat it.
Before you couldn't feel the cold.
Tommy?
I'm calling Dr. Lippert.
No, I'm afraid.
She's
I mean, also as well, especially profound because we know from the book that isn't how she views him at all. You know, the book is a representation of how she perceives him and his quest to save her.
Sure.
Right? She is the Queen of Spain in her book. She is Spain itself, ultimately, beset upon from this rot within, which just happens to be the Spanish Inquisition.
Which I think, by the way, again,
narratively.
if you want like fucking narrative, I think that's a genius. I think that's really well interesting themes to pick and tie into it all. Yeah, there's so much you can do with that.
And then obviously he is a questing knight. He is a conquistador. He wants to conquer death. He wants to conquer the cancer that's ravaging his wife. He will give his all for it. But what she is saying quite explicitly when she sends him on the quest is, you know, like understand when you return, we're going to live together until the end of time. I'll take you, you know, as my husband. And she gives him the ring, and the ring is obviously the recurring thing. It's the pledge. It's the pledge to somebody else to love them even after they're gone. And obviously, what's quite poignant about the end of the movie is he gets the ring back. It's, you know, it's cyclical. He doesn't have the ring. He tattoos the ring onto his fingers like a penance, like almost like a reminder.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then obviously he gets it back because in accepting the, you know, like the fact that she's gone and moved on to this other plane of like existence, if you will. And you know, we see the tree, it blossoms again at the end as the you know, as the supernova occurs. Like, yeah, it's like that's why I always took it as subtext and not literal, because it seems to me to be a very good visual metaphor for him accepting she's dead and moving on.
It's
which
also
would be
the
incredibly
visual
coincidental if it was literal, you know.
Yeah, the symbolism also goes deeper, which is that, you know, that's why I think it's in his own mind, because in his own mind the penance never ends. He is literally using that same pen to tattoo hundreds of rings on his arm. He has to he's so obsessed, he can't let go.
And then at this point, they become rings like a tree, where
yes,
you know,
exactly.
you
and it becomes ring like a tree.
It's the idea. This is why, to me, sure, you get the metaphor that sure it's like thousands and thousands of years and millions of years or whatever. Yeah, of course.
And also it's a visual parallel to earlier in the movie when the Inquisitor is flagellating himself, which is the form of penitence, you know, that very religious monks used to do in the past, the mortification of the flesh, right? And these are the things that I would think are not great about people who are trapped in a spiritual cycle, who cannot be on what this film would call the road to awe.
And remember, Monty, the Inquisitor guy even says what in a fucked up way is actually accurate to the film. It's just he has a really evil medieval interpretation. He says, our bodies are just prisons for our
Which is a Gnostic
souls.
viewpoint.
Yeah, which is like, listen, that definitely ties into the theme of the movie. But notice, in some ways, that's more like the dark interpretation the scientist guy has of sort of like, we're trapped here and I just have to get the physical cure. Whereas, like, if anything, his wife's whole thing is sort of the alchemical transmutation of your soul into something more powerful. Like, if people don't know, half the shit in like Buddhist philosophy is actually the notion. We talked about this on the episode about Enter the Void, which is the idea that like you can't like actually avoid death. The idea is you're supposed to make your soul like a vehicle that can navigate the afterlife and get its way out of things like getting trapped in loops of memories and regrets and things that hold you down in the dark, etc. So I find this movie like really beautiful. I think it's like it takes a lot of like really dark emotional energy and fucked up things that happen, and if it succeeds, like at the end of the film visually, it transmutes it into something fucking epic. And I think the ending is just one of the greatest payoffs of any film I've seen.
This episode of Foreplay is brought to you by Prize Picks. So whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, of course, it always feels good to be right. So there's a lot of playoffs happening right now, especially for the NFL. Also, we're in full swing in the NBA and NHL season, so it's a great time to go on Prize Picks and pick your players. It's super easy. All you have to do is pick an over-under. So, for example, in NFL, it could be over a player getting over a certain amount of yards or points. Same thing with the NBA. Could be points, could be three-point shots, could be goals in hockey. So you pick 2 or 3 players and make your lineup. And then if you get it right, well, you could win big. So also with the esports season starting again, so League of Legends season is going to be starting here in January. Counter-Strike will be resuming. We also have Valorant starting again. All of these and more, if you're an esports fan, you can find on Prize Picks as well. Plus, they've got a new feature. They now have early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes if you're watching along. And they also have a new social feed feature where you can share a prize pick with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. You can copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow prize pick partners like us and tailor fade our picks with just one click. So thanks a lot to Prize Picks for sponsoring Foreplay. You can download the Prize Picks app today and use code Foreplay. That's FOURPLAY to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Foreplay to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Yeah, and there really is not a second waste in this film. All the dialogue connects to other dialogue. All the shots connect to other shots. I mean, in every single...
There's no wasted characters either. Like, Ellen Bernstein fucking kills it in this film too. She's just fucking mega in Darren Aronofsky films.
Every single timeline has the same shot of the speeding vehicle, whether it's the spaceship or the car or the horse.
And that's the way he does that shot where you do a 180 on the camera. It comes in like you come in on upside down and flip over. Like a stylish film, by the way. How about all those scenes where the one where she has a seizure and he goes walking in the town, so there's no sound for him. He's just in his own little world until, like, you know, a car comes in or something. Like,
how about the transitions that go from like the hair reacting on the tree to the hair reacting on Izzy? You know, him stroking the tree to him stroking her back. I mean, the
even
editing
how that's
is
like
so
the view of a fucking husband. You're just seeing like the side of the neck as you're lying there. It's a super like fucking intense film. And I agree with you. It's got a visual alphabet. You're just expected to pick up on it. No one's going, then a bit and this represented her neck or whatever. Like that. That'll ruin the film.
The bit as well when it first snaps into the scene where she's saying, "Come on, it's first snow. Let's go out." And he's bald. He's bald like future Tom. But then in the later scene, when you see that scene again, obviously he's Tommy. And it's like, again, none of that's explained. You just have to understand that what this is representative of and how we're going to go through this kind of stuff.
The problem is, when I've watched this, I never have any of these problems, guys. But sadly, you're now all making me realise I'm just going to be rude. I'm going to take people from my area, the northeast of England. I'm imagining a guy going, well, he's bloody bald and now he's got hair. Like, what's going on? He invented some sort of hair regrowth thing instead. Like, I'm imagining some dullard just trying to watch this. Right, in space. That's not even, it's a bubble. It's not even a fucking spaceship. Like,
no, but this is the other problem with it. As I said, people do, unfortunately, even though quite explicitly there is the narrative mechanic of a fictional book in the film.
I think that's
being
a bit of a giveaway of myself.
Yeah,
I know.
right.
I know.
Like, unfortunately, that comes like halfway through the movie. He's even reading it.
He's going like chapter 2. Then we're seeing the scene of that.
Yeah, but
like,
I mean, you have to get that far into the movie to realize that is even going on without turning it off.
For like, there's so many people who like then assume, you know, like, oh, this is like the future stuff is all literal as well. It's like, guys, come on, just think about it. Like, what would the message be if the guy became so insanely obsessed with beating death that he lived for like another 400, 500 years? And then took the tree of life to a fucking supernova because he wanted to experience like what that has to be allegorical, guys. Like it just has to be, and it's actually more satisfying narratively that it's allegorical. He did get round to finishing her book. He did write the chapter. The final chapter isn't maudlin or miserable. It doesn't have a Deus Ex Machina where she is returned to him. It's about not only the acceptance of her death, but the acceptance of his own death, that they will be reunited in some way that the human psyche can't process. And that's like, again, the spiritual concept at the core of this is that death is something that has to happen as part of our life cycle. And yes, we are transformed through the mechanism of death into something else, that it isn't an end. It isn't that life as we process it might be a finite resource, but the spiritual aspect, what creates us as unique entities in the universe, will continue to exist in some shape or form. We just can't our sensory process just can't make sense of it. So that's fine. That's great. And he accepts that right at the end of the film and moves on with his life. And that's great. That's what he should be doing. Put the regrets aside, you know? It's like Duncan says, it's a wonderful payoff. If you think it's literal, well, but spaceman go to sun and blow up. We're like, guys, please, like, get me out. But put it this way, I don't. If that is your interpretation, it is there. It does work. I will say that narrative, you can believe that, and the film still works on almost every level. But I think you are missing out a little key detail of the end. But whatever.
By the way, a few things we haven't even addressed is how good this film is. We haven't addressed any of the actors, or the obvious third actor is the fucking soundtrack. The soundtrack is unbelievable on this film, mate. It's one of those ones. This is one of the soundtracks I literally do have on like the MP3 player that I do listen to sometimes, because what's brilliant about it is, much like the movie, it is all building towards like the last track, which is the epic, like Death is the Road to All, which builds all the elements up in sort of a post-rock-esque fashion with orchestral components. But also, almost all the other tracks in it, as you'll see in the movie, are ones that have like refrains that it's a bit like The Conversation. Everything's like a slight variant of the main theme with like elements of it. Like there's a version for When He's the Conquistador, there's a version of the Future Time Space, but it's all actually like building into the last track. I think the soundtrack is fucking mega. And it's also one of those ones that if people don't know, it's the same guy who did the soundtrack for Requiem for a Dream, is actually part of how this guy got into doing soundtracks, because the guy who made the soundtrack is a guy called Clint Mansell, who was in a bizarre like post-punk group called Pop Will Eat Itself, which was a music group in like the 80s or early 90s or something. And basically he transitioned, and thanks to I think Aronofsky movie, he became like a soundtrack guy. He did loads of other stuff since then in the 2010s and whatnot. So I think he does an amazing job with the actual soundtrack, taking these orchestral elements but making this cool like thing. And then also I think that story about how it would have been Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett, look, those are obviously some very capable actors. I can't know what that would be like. It'd be a bit weird, by the way, because they're basically like, it just seems like strange casting, but I can't imagine it being anyone other than Hugh Jackman in this, though. I think Hugh Jackman fucking kills this role so hard. Remember, this is the time period, this is in 2006, when people really thought he's a guy who does musicals or he's fucking Wolverine. Like, this guy, as we've seen on this series, like, he's also The Prestige, he did The Prisoner. It's a fucking really, if you give him really good material, he's a really good
Hugh
actor.
Jackman is crazy underrated, because not only, I think, is he one of the greatest actors of his generation, but he's also an excellent singer, an excellent dancer, has excellent discipline. I mean, he was just in that Deadpool versus Wolverine movie. He's like 60 and he was on steroids and jacked as fuck and water deprived, like all of them are. I mean, it's crazy the lengths this guy goes to for his craft. And he's so like, he's a great Wolverine, don't get me wrong, but he's just so much more than that. And I think people have no idea.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, put it this way. Where does this rank in the Jackman films? I think his best performance ever is Prisoners, which we've obviously covered.
Yes,
I just think the places he must have gone to commit that to screen, you know, like, fuck it. They're the, you know, whenever anyone talks about the cliche of like the actor, like it probably takes them a while to like shed the character off, you know, like people said that about Heath Ledger with Joker, when obviously that wasn't true. People who knew him said that wasn't true. I probably think like Hugh Jackman had to decompress quite a bit after Prisoners. Like that to me was like a real tour de force. And then I think The Prestige, I think there's so many great moments in his performance there, not least of all when he has the twin.
When he plays himself.
It's
genius. He's so different. You would believe it was just a fucked up doppelganger. Wouldn't it? It's actually him for real. Yeah. I remember looking that up.
Crazy the subtleties in that. And then it's probably this might be his third best overall, because I think ultimately, while there is almost a deliberate injection of melodrama in the current timeline, you have to remember, right? Like, first of all, at the end when she actually dies and he's fucking wrestling with the doctor, That's an actor just turning on ugly
Like,
crying.
that's done, yeah.
Yeah, not crying.
Yeah, yeah.
We can all squeeze a tear out when we think something sad and like
Oh, it
full
seems completely
ugly.
distraught. I buy it, yeah.
To do that, and then obviously I think as well the performance with the Conquistador.
Oh, he's ballsy. So different as
Yeah.
well, isn't he? But
Yeah.
so sick in that
Yeah.
role. That's why I
So,
say I would actually watch a film like that where he just played like a Conquistador, mate. He seemed mega. He seemed born for it.
And I'll tell you an interesting fact as well, right? Because this is how mental Hugh Jackman is. He wanted all of the yoga and the Tai Chi stuff he does when he's Space Tom. He wanted all of that to be natural. So he practiced yoga for a year just so he could nail the perfect lotus position.
Wait, how dope though is that scene where it's like him blacked out against the negative space against the
And he
night?
just
doing the Tai
Fucking
Chi.
awesome. Again, there's so many beautiful shots in this. It's why we've already discussed this on a past episode. It's why this movie did make me. I was a complete mark for Darren Aronofsky. I assumed like, holy fuck, him and Christopher Nolan are going to be like the next like fucking Stanley Kubrick or something. These guys are unbelievable. Sadly, Aronofsky didn't really make that leap. I'd say Christopher Nolan made the threshold. So no, but I remember watching this film being like, this is masterful shit, bro. It's some like magnum opus shit.
Also, as well, Aronofsky was dating Rachel Weisz at the time, right?
Yes.
And I think
Classic way to get in the movies, ladies. Just saying. Just saying. I didn't make.
She's
the
really good
rules
at
up.
this.
She kills it, mate. She's very good.
It must have been weird directing your partner of several years terminally ill.
Sure.
You know, and I wonder if had it been another actress, would the movie have had that like level of sensitivity, right? Probably not.
Well, I think it made it more personal because also
Yeah.
apparently Aronofsky's both of his parents had cancer at about the same time. So it was also deeply personal on that front. So
there's probably some element of him and Tommy then presumably trying to work this all out, right? I see.
So what I'm saying is that he himself had these experiences with his own parents with cancer, and then to have his partner in the film dying of cancer. I mean, that must be tough for him to deal with.
Also, by the way, bear in mind, this movie came on the heels of fucking Requiem for a Dream. You couldn't really take a different interpretation of life than Hubert Selby Jr.'s in that film versus this film. Like, Hubert Selby Jr. would just be like, fuck off, I'm working on this, man. Like, that's like, it's a very different materialistic version of life, certainly.
Well, this is the other thing, man. Like, just to talk about Aronofsky's like career trajectory, the fact this film didn't succeed commercially is definitely, I think, probably put us on the bad timeline.
I can remember when this came out, it wasn't even put in most of the cinemas in the UK.
Yeah. By the way, I looked it up.
I had to go to like some weird one to find it. I remember.
I looked it up. Apparently, it was like the 171st film in 2006 in terms of making money. It was bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bomb. I mean, it was a low budget film that didn't even make half of its budget back. And so obviously what that does for Aronofsky is as well, because like, put it this way, his calling card Pi, it puts him on the map as like an exciting young director. He did that at 29. And then 2 years later, he does Requiem for a Dream, which is one of the most I
was loving it. It was iconic at the time.
Exactly. I've grown to detest that movie.
Believe it or not, I've never rewatched it. It was just the experience. I enjoyed it, but I've never rewatched it, man.
I've really grown to detest it because I remember as well, like when it was out, I was doing a creative writing course at university, and there was some wanker in there who like thought he was the shit, but like couldn't write a lick. And he was like, obviously, you know, like I've watched Requiem, and I was like, what? You know, Requiem. What? Requiem for a Dream, fantastic movie. He didn't even know it was based on a book. This cunt. Like, so anyway, they're the type of people.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the type of people. Right. They're the type of people that fucking revere that movie when, in actual fact, like it is an over the top. Like there are much better films that deal with like those things.
Yeah.
And
it is like a pornography of degeneracy and decadence and horror.
Yeah, but what I will say is stylistically as a
fantastic
movie,
shot film.
Yes,
absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is why I think we're on the bad timeline now, because this was the blend of all of that style.
Bro, remember
and
that film
emotional
especially.
maturity.
That film, it literally every fucking drug movie after that copied that style of like.
Oh, bro. Yeah.
The eye goes. He invented that in that film. He actually seemed like he was going to be some super visionary director. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. This has an emotional core that's like wise beyond its years.
Yes.
Obviously, it was like 6 years after you know what it's like in your 30s. That's when theoretically you are meant to like go from, in your early 30s, you're still like just a 20-something figuring it out, thinking, like, it's all bollocks getting old, like all those people saying, oh, when you turn 30, nah, fuck, I don't feel any different. It's about the time you're 37 or 38 and you're staring into the existential abyss of the 40s. You are thinking to yourself, like, yeah. Actually, this isn't great.
Hey, it's
this
me.
aging deal. So, yeah, exactly. And so obviously you emotionally matured during that time, and it was the perfect theme for him to explore at that time. It couldn't be for me in terms of its emotional maturity. It's such a stark contrast to Requiem for a Dream. This is the infinitely better movie, and it's crazy this didn't do as well. And I just think because of that, if you look,
because remember, after it was only a couple of years later when he did The Wrestler with Mickey Rock, everyone was loving him again, and everyone was all over Aronofsky.
I think it's lucky he got another shot after
everyone
this
just
failure.
dipped on this film. It was crazy.
I mean, he did say it
because this wasn't even. Here's the thing: it wasn't even a critical darling. I think that's what's crazy about this movie is that many critics really hated this movie. So it's not like he didn't make money.
Loaded up. What
Ebert's
did the boy say? I don't even know. I'm waiting for it. I never look it up on purpose.
He don't like it. But what I'm saying is, if you had a commercial failure that was lauded or nominated for awards or beloved by the critics, it'd be one thing. But this was like very lukewarmly received by critics and by the cinephile audience, and it did financially poorly. So that could actually just totally sink you right there. I think it's amazing he recovered.
So the quote from a 2009 interview with The Guardian is, he says that there were a lot of haters out at the Venice Film Festival. The film's about the fact that it's okay that we die and we should come to terms with it. But many, many people don't want to think about that. So why pay money for a meditation on losing someone you love? Everything about Western culture denies that. It was pre-Obama, smack in the middle of the Paris Hilton time. But there has been a serious turn now. People are starting to realize that the party's over finally, so we can stop thinking about this culture of superficiality and start to remember that there are other things going on. He said that in 2009 when the movie had gone through a critical reappraisal, albeit too late to, certainly save the movie as, it's not even a cult movie. People just don't watch this movie, right? But also as well, like, it didn't save Aronofsky's career from going into a very weird place, because as Duncan says, he makes The Wrestler 2 years later. Everybody loves that film. Everyone considers it a tour de force. It is a good movie, but The Fountain is a better film. He made Black Swan. Everybody loved that, right? Yeah, it's okay. And then after that, he's just off the cliff. and listen, what
I will say is that people say The Fountain is pretentious or maybe melodramatic or overwrought. That is exactly what Mother is. That is what Mother is. This movie is beautiful. I did not like Mother. Mother is all of the criticism people level at this film correctly should level at Mother instead.
I'll say this though, Mother, fucking hell, compared to The Whale. If you gun to my head, do you want to watch The Whale again, or shall we put Mother on? I'm choosing Mother, man. Like, for real. No joke. Fuck everything about The Whale. I can't watch fucking fat Brendan Fraser cry for 2 hours. Like, I'm good, actually. That movie was fucking dog shit. I'm eating a pizza in the dark. Fuck this.
What a change, right? From The Fountain.
But that's what I mean. It's like, how do you go from creating one of the most profound visual, meditations on the nature of existence and death, and then I'm fat. Like, it's fucking puerile. It's infantile. Like, it's garbage. Let's talk about this Mayan stuff because it is incredibly well researched. And by the way, this is a movie that, considering none of this went into it because it doesn't tell you anything literally. He did a ton of crazy stuff. Like, I mean, you know, he spent time watching brain surgeries. He just did all this like mad, unnecessary stuff. And one of the things, obviously, he did was extensive research on Mayan mythology and Mayan religion, just so he could insert a line about Xibalba.
And also get that wrong. My theory is he
Correct him,
intentionally got it
Monty.
wrong.
Correct.
I actually think he intentionally got it wrong. And I've looked around and I've tried to find information that lines up with what he's saying, and I can't find it. And about my Mayan experiences. So when I was in my final year of college and for a year afterwards, I actually did a Mayan adulthood initiation. And this would have been a ritual that was done by people in Guatemala when they basically came of age, turned 13 or whatever. I was doing it at 21, 22, right? So this was brought to America by a man who was a Mayan shaman in a community in Guatemala who fled during the Guatemalan Civil War and was told by his shamanic teacher to continue this tradition in the United States. There are maybe 70 or 80 other people who have done this over a number of years. I do not believe it has happened since the year after I did it. So this would have been 15 years or so ago. So I would have gone back for it had it actually happened. So the tradition, unfortunately, has kind of stalled out, maybe dead forever. I don't know. I don't know if people in Guatemala or Mayan communities in the Yucatan are still doing this. I know that this is a very old thing that I did. And what it required was basically collecting. I had like a godfather through this process, and I had to live in very specific ways for an entire year, involve no substances whatsoever, including alcohol, no sex. I had a godfather. I had to wake up at dawn every day and go running. I had to collect or make hundreds, thousands of items, including, and there's no instructions either. And so it would be things like, you need to make obsidian arrowheads. Okay. How do I do that? Who teaches me how to do that? So it's a very interesting process because you are left to your own devices and you sit there, and I had to find people to teach me how to make obsidian arrowheads, to get the obsidian, and I can't pay anybody for anything. I literally just have to ask them and convince them with my own eloquence to give me things or to spend all their time teaching me. I had to tan tan deer hides. I had to find macaw feathers. I had to do tons of stuff. And then all of this is interspersed with very specific rituals, and it's particularly ritual storytelling. And it culminates in more or less like a 2-week-long ritual that involves lots of not sleeping and running and being completely like out of your mind at the end. And so I have heard many Mayan stories, some of which were written down, some of which I was told were never written down and were only ever told in the initiation hut. So I have a very strong, I would say, grasp of Mayan mythology. On my own, I have also done a lot of reading of Mayan anthropological scholarship through my own interests. I think there's probably a world where if I didn't get a break in esports, I would have actually just become like a Mayan or Aztec scholar because I'm very interested in those cultures. Seriously, I think that's best.
No, I know. I'm just thinking about that timeline. Like,
it's probably speaking of different timelines, parallel universes. There's probably like a lot of parallel universes where I am like a Mayan archaeologist or an Aztec archaeologist. Probably a lot of them, or some sort of Mayan language scholar. To be clear, I can't read Mayan glyphs. I can't. I'm not fluent in Mayan, but I think there are a lot of misnomers about Mayan culture where people think of it as this dead thing because famously, like, nobody knows why the Mayans civilization collapsed, right? It was one of a series of Mesoamerican civilizations, Olmecs, Toltecs, Mayans, Aztecs, that kind of grew and fell over the centuries. But the truth is that the Mayans never really went anywhere. They're still there in the Yucatan, in the interior of Mexico, speaking Mayan, doing Mayan traditions, believing in Mayan gods, in Guatemala around, Lake Atitlan. There are all these people, millions of them today. You can go there. You could go there. They still live in similar huts, many of them, to the way they did way back then, 1,500 years ago. Not 1,500 years ago. Yeah, some 1,500 years ago, but more like 1,200 years ago. Anyway, the point is that these people all still exist, and so the stories you can actually hear still told today in many cases. And so what happened was that people couldn't read Mayan written language anymore up until relatively recently, when it was then cracked. And Mayan written language is absolutely fascinating. I would definitely recommend watching documentaries on it, because it's probably the weirdest written language, in that they figured out that each hieroglyph is actually different syllables, and they form words, but the words can have the same sound, can be represented in several different ways, which is why it took them so long to crack the code. But they used modern Mayan language, which shares very many similarities. It's very similar language to the ancient Mayan language to do it. So this is all to say, I'm very interested in this stuff. And so this movie in particular, because this coincidentally came out the exact time I was doing my initiation. So that was very weird to kind of see some of these concepts and stories on screen. So to talk about the Mayans were very skilled astronomers, and they really cared. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard all the nonsense about the turning of the age and the end of time with Maya that happened to 2012 or whatever it was.
It wasn't the whole fucking millennial bug fucking nonsense all based on some what happened in the Mayan?
It's all BS.
The Mayan calendar ends. Yeah,
it doesn't end. It just changes. It just restarts the count, basically.
But you know how it is. It was fucking. Planes were going to drop out the sky, computers.
Yeah, but 2012 was people thought, oh, the Mayan apocalypse is coming or whatever.
They literally made a movie in 2012 about the end of the world in 2012.
So the Mayans really cared about the movement of the stars, and they had very advanced mathematical and astronomy knowledge for the time. It should be noted also, by the time of the conquistadors in 1500, the kind of high Mayan society where they would have been at these pyramids was gone, right? This was the time of the Aztecs. The temples, so Chichen Itza, Tikal, these places still existed, but they would have been ruins, mostly by this time. The Mayans had kind of dispersed into smaller villages and communities, and they weren't building these massive cities anymore where there were these huge monuments. Anyways, neither here nor there. This is all metaphorical, which we'll get to. So Xibalba is the Mayan underworld. That is a real thing. However, I have never been able to find any stories, any references, any evidence that it was affiliated with the Orion Nebula, which is an astronomical feature that is known as M42. The Orion Nebula is very interesting because it's actually one of the most researched astronomical phenomenon, because it's both very close to Earth. It is the closest star nursery to Earth. And nebulas typically are places where gas collects and forms new stars. There can be nebulas where stars are dying. We'll get to that. But basically, the Orion Nebula is important in Mayan mythology for the following reason, however, which is that 3 stars that comprise our constellation of Orion form basically an equilateral triangle, right? So it looks like this. And you can see this at the end of the movie when he looks out at the stars after planting the tree, and you see there's these 3 stars in a triangle, and in the middle is the Orion Nebula. And that's what he's looking at, which is what they call Xibalba. Again, not Xibalba.
Which also mirrors how on the Earth he used the dagger to do the triangulation.
Yes. And also exactly. But what are the 3 stars? The 3 stars are representative of the Mayan hearth. So in a Mayan hearth, in a hut, they would put 3 stones, and in the middle of the 3 stones would be the fire. On top of the stones goes the comal, which is the clay pan that you use to cook tortillas, because maize is the fundamental food of the Mayan people, and they believed that people themselves were created out of maize dough. Okay? So it's about the creation of people. So this is the fundamental place of cooking. And also they believed that the act of creating maize dough and tortillas was the same way that the gods created people. So those three stars in the sky represent the hearth of creation. So in Mayan mythology, the way the earth was created was that the gods set three stones in the sky in that Orion's star constellation. And the Orion Nebula, which you can see with the naked eye, it's kind of like a fuzzy outline, doesn't look like a normal star. That was supposed to be the smoke of the fire of creation. So when they looked at it, they would see that this was the start of the world. It was the birth of the world. It wasn't the end. And so I will posit, I have not seen anybody else issue this theory, that when we are told that Orion's Nebula is Xibalba, the underworld, that is the place of death, right? In Mayan mythology, that's where the lords of death live. And people are resurrected, including First Father. He is very famously killed in Xibalba. He is then, if you've read the Popol Vuh, which is the epic mythology of Mayan, it's the existing Mayan mythological account that we have, which is the story of the heroic
Be
twins.
honest with you, I haven't.
So Popol Vuh is a very important text.
Right.
So in it, the story is the First Father goes to the underworld. I'm not going to get into why. This is way too long already. He dies, and the hero twins come, his sons, and come get his body and resurrect him. Okay, that's the core story of the Popol Vuh. So that is, Xibalba is a literal underworld. They believe you go into a cave usually, because there are cenotes in Mexico and Guatemala. You go into the cave, and that's like the underworld, right? The Milky Way is sometimes referred to as the road to awe, because there is a metaphor in Mayan speech that when you die, it's called entering the road. And the road is the Milky Way, and the Milky Way is a representation of the tree of life. So the strip of stars that is the Milky Way galaxy. So when you enter the road to awe, you are descending the Milky Way into Xibalba, which is the underworld. Again, tease up with the storyline of him traveling through the stars, right? So my point that I'm going to make is that it's a long-winded point about the hearthstones, is that when he is traveling to Xibalba, he is told he is traveling to death. He is traveling to the underworld. But what is he actually traveling to? The Mayan symbol of the creation of life and the creation of the world. When we are told he's traveling to the Orion Nebula, he's told he's traveling to a dying star. The Orion Nebula contains no dying star. It is a place where stars are born. And I think that this is intentionally wrong. I think Aronofsky misrepresented Orion's Nebula and Xibalba, because the idea is that the characters think they are approaching death, but what they are actually approaching is the birth or rebirth of something. And so you just have to know what those things actually are, because if you start to dig into it, and in that way, it changes the perspective, where the movie itself is, you think it's approaching death, but it is actually a theme of rebirth. And I've not heard anybody else say that, or I haven't seen that anywhere else.
Probably because you're one of the few people that is educated in...
Or gives a fuck. I'll say it politely.
But you see, Thorin, it actually, I think, reinforces the themes of the movie in a very cool way. Because I said, I think Aronofsky intentionally misrepresented these things to make them appear death-like when they are about resurrection or the creation of the world.
Put it this way, the literal interpretation in the film is obviously more in line with what the Tommy character thinks of the world as. Like, he does see it more like the Inquisitor as like an iron prison, you know. And also, think about this. I think one of the most beautiful details is that thing that, as Richard says, that one of the things he gets to go back and do, remember, this isn't a time travel film, is he just gets to plant the seed that she asked him to plant. Remember, he literally describes dismisses and refuses to take part in that funeral scene, all because the Ellen Bernstein woman just suggests that she had grace at her end, but he can't accept it. To him, that's like, that's fake, or, you know, you're just copying and you're going to die anyway. He can't accept the idea you could ever die at peace, seemingly. To me, that's also one of the big epiphanies this guy has.
He also has a very, like, I want to say, like, a visceral, like, contempt. There's that scene where she's clearly saying goodbye to her. And he's looking through the crack in the window, and you can see, like, disgust, horror. There's something there just on his eyes, like, how dare you be there saying goodbye? And then he walks in as if nothing's happened. Hey, brought your book. If you want to work on it, that's cool. When, again, clearly he should be, because everything around us narratively is telling us she's about to die. And
everything she says, bro, is basically like a roundabout way of saying, I'm dying. Here's what's going to happen. Please don't, like, regret it. Enjoy this last time with me. And his whole shit sort of like when Monty told us that, he's just going, oh, really? Oh, it was a nebula. Oh, yep, sure, yep. I've got to go to surgery now. Excuse me. Like, even though actually she's trying to tell him some, like, straight fire shit.
Actually, what you'll find is Shabalba isn't...
But so Shabalba is very famous, like, term, so I think he used it. But I also think it lines up with so many other parallels within the film, such as when she dies, she wants him to continue her act of creation, which is the creation of the book. And so I just think he made it appear as though it is a quest to the underworld when it is actually a quest to the point of creation.
Don't you find that also quite beautiful too? Even though, but I can certainly see why to some people, if they don't like it, they think this is pretentious. I think the idea that, like, he's reading and then he gets to the story, chapter 13 or whatever it is, nothing there. Like, and then the idea, the reason he has to actually finish the book is because, one, she's dead, mate, like, she can't finish it, and then two, he has to engage with the themes of the story, and in doing so, as you can see, this is surely, like, that's what's so great about this film to me, is that if you actually did just take it as a literal sci-fi movie, it's like, it's a bit whatever then in it, like, but to me, it's like an actual, like, personal experience a man goes through, the transformation of his soul is fucking mega.
Yeah.
It's really profound.
I mean, look, also as well, I mean, I think just to touch on the Shabalba stuff.
Also, by the way, as I said, I was saying this to Monty, I actually wanted to watch this film anyway. It's one of my favourites. But I actually think I've just recently been the longest period without watching it. I think the last time I watched it might have been like 8 years ago or something.
Wow.
Like, before that, I used to watch it every couple of years, you know. Yeah. Mate, it holds up. Like, I had no experience of, like, oh, this isn't as good. I thought it's as good as ever, mate. It's mega.
I mean, like, that is like a recurring theme as well, right? Like in lots of mythologies, that you know, people going to the underworld to defy death, and often in the name of love, right? You know, there's lots of myths about people going into the underworld to get their, like, wives back, or, you know, whatever the fuck. And obviously, like, yeah, there's a little bit of an element here. I think what Aronofsky was trying to do, and I think where the film is successful, is you are essentially showing all of the parallels between a very Eastern, and, well, not even an Eastern, but an almost like ancient spiritual culture, and then what we in the West consider to be profane, which is, of course, the idea that anyone should die. You know, showing the parallels between all of the religions and all of the faiths and all of the beliefs. You know, like, for example, the dagger they use to find the Garden of Life is obviously, it looks a bit like a crucifix as well, right? When they're holding it up, and yet it's a Mayan dagger. It gives you the
that symbol well. Is the cross symbol is used frequently in Mayan art to depict the tree of life. And
okay, that's interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting. And also the tree of life. So the tree of life is, like I said, sometimes represented as the Milky Way itself, and it is represented as coming out of people's bodies a lot of the time. So it's very similar to, or God's bodies, is very similar to what you see at the end when Tomas, the Conquistador, dies, when the vegetation is coming out of him, because you will see images of Mayan gods with the tree, like, sprouting out of their chest, or it comes out of a turtle. The god comes out of a turtle, or the tree comes out of a turtle, and Orion's belt is a turtle. In
the actual scene when he finally gets past the fucking, like, priest guy or whatever, and he goes into that, just that opening sequence when he walks in. The idea you're telling me there's no CGI, that looks like the best CGI you've ever seen in your life. That fucking that hidden temple area with the tree.
cold.
And then
So it's
also
really
that
cool.
the whole sequence with like the magical effect is just mind blowing. Even though I can tell some of it's like stop animation or some shit, you know, with like but that's even cool itself. That has like a artistic flair. I think that scene is fucking unbelievable, unforgettable scene. Like just more like it feels like almost like you're in the best video game ever when he walks into that area. Like holy fuck, the sort of scope of it's nuts.
But I also love the fact that like she didn't tell no lies. Like he partook of the fucking sap of the tree, and you've got eternal life, but you're plants now. you're
check the terms and conditions on that.
Exactly.
It's in the fine print.
And also,
print, bro. Like,
the idea of sap is also really important to Mayan religious traditions. So it's something very interesting about the Mayans is that they believed that secretions of things were like food for the gods. So like they called it eats.
Okay.
I mean, they call it eats. So
Anyway,
they thought
Monty, it's time for your holy secretions.
This is all going to come up again for Naked Lunch. By the way,
I'm going to say milk.
That's true. That's true.
You know, sweat, sebum, tears.
I mean, by the way, on quite a literal level, they are like one of the things that blows me. One of the things, if you're somebody who's a purely strict, like materialist atheist, one thing I would look into will actually melt your fucking brain is the effect of like breast milk and how it has like some sort of a feedback loop with the baby, and essentially like it will change depending on what the state of the baby. Like if it's ill, you'll actually get different breast milk out of the mother because somehow like the body system can detect that it needs to get. It's actually mind blowing me. It's actually unbelievable.
So the idea of
I get the premise.
Yeah, eats is like the idea of a secretion, but it was not only, you know, animal secretions. It would also be things like candle wax, like drippings from a candle, or rust on metal objects. So there was a certain veneration for these things that would appear out of other things, basically. And to the degree that in Mayan shamanism, the idea is that the spiritual energy that the shaman is receiving is like the secretion of the god realm, kind of. So the idea of the sap having all this power is a very Mayan idea.
He
very
gobbled
Mayan.
It down as well. He weren't ready.
So like I'm just saying like that would have been considered a pretty magical substance. Because also in the Mayans famously used copal, the incense, which would have been like another secretion, and the incense would be used for their ritual. So copal is a very important part of Mayan religious traditions.
My queen, now and forever.
I mean, that's kind of interesting as well. Like in terms of where this stands as like one of the more spiritual films, kind of that has been committed to like Western cinema. I'm trying to think of something like you probably would have to. I mean, can you even include Jodorowsky? I guess not, because he's not part of any sort of like Hollywood system or whatever. Like this movie coming out in like 2006 and being the product of like Warner Brothers is fucking crazy.
Oh, remember, this is way before like Joe Rogan and like people know about DMT and shit. That's all like not that big a deal now. Back then, that was some like really out there shit.
I mean, there's no movie of this era that is even remotely like it. To your point, like even if you look at some of Jodorowsky stuff, if we're going to talk about Holy Mountain or something like that, it's not at this budget and it's not with actors like this. That is very much. I mean, it's a cool movie, but it's very much like an indie art piece, and it's not. It's not like a studio film with.
That's why I say it is the really crazy thing is to imagine the original film being made with fucking Brad Pitt. Like what? That seems
especially that era Brad Pitt, because he wasn't ready to carry the weight of a movie like this. Like, thank God, actually, we got this version, because Ah, man.
Oh,
man,
that's basically not that many years after Spygate. He's still just a young pup, figuring it out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if he'd have had the nuance to pull off this before. I think Hugh Jackman nails this one. It's one of his best, like you said, it's one of his best performances.
Yeah. But I mean, like, this is like 4 years before that documentary, the one, this DMT, the spirit molecule. It was like one of the massive Netflix documentaries back in like 2010.
Yeah.
It was like one of the most watched Netflix documentaries of all time. And the premise is quite literal that, like, it's not just a trip. Like, you are actually connecting with the fabric of the universe when you do DMT. And the fact that the drug itself has no discernible downsides, is profoundly powerful in a way that if you've ever taken it, it will change you forever. That's not mainstream parlance. Like,
oh, no.
It's kind of hard as well to go back to like 2006 me, very different cat to who I am today. And probably in 2006, had I even done any heavy psychedelics, acid, sure, mushroom, sure, but like DMT and ayahuasca, that's all much, much later in my drug journey. And now it's I watch The Fountain and I go, yeah, this all just makes sense. This makes perfect sense. Yeah, I've seen shit like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've been in that bubble. You know what I mean? I've for real. Like,
Space Richard. Did you experience a supernova or the birth of a star?
Well, also like Hugh Jackman, my hair grew back as well. But,
there's even an interesting element if you think of the actual director, because the first film, Pi basically may as well be about fucking like Adderall or something, mate. Like it's like it's right in that sphere of like nerds, super intense math shit, all literal.
I mean, that's just paranoid schizophrenia.
Sure, but it's a mega film.
Yeah.
Again, you just know he had to have been
screen.
a fan of Cronenberg, a whole bunch of classic people, like that. Then he does Requiem for a Dream. That's just the traditional street drugs, Again, if you've ever watched any of those Hollywood films that like mildly glamorize drugs, but at the same time have the darker, it's that, but like, again, super intense. To go from that to then being like psychedelics and we're in some sort of like super fucking emotional landscape of the soul is like, it's got an interesting progression too.
But this is where the studio totally fucked up. Right, think about like all the other movies we've kind of covered where it's an experience. It's not just like
this is why I do think, even though it has quite a few reviews on IMDb, the reason why I picked this for Hidden Gems though is, bro, I this is one of those films that genuinely makes me think like, do I just have a really different set of tastes to other people? Yeah. Not only was this movie not rated by people at the time, I never heard anyone bring it up ever. There's like me and 5 people trying to proselytize the whole world.
It's actually one of the things that Thorin and I bonded over. It's one of the things Thorin and I bonded over when we had first met was this movie.
But I mean, I've almost never heard it even referenced. People don't even use it as a touch point.
The tagline for this movie is fucking criminal because it's not what it's about.
Hit me.
It's what if you could live forever?
See what I mean? That makes it sound literal. Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Why? So like people,
that's like whack.
People were thinking this is like some sort of like, it's a romance, story about like never giving up on. You didn't know it's not about that at all, and that's how they marketed it, unfortunately. And I think if you'd genuinely marketed this just on the visuals alone and called it like this, our generation's 2001, A Space Odyssey, you probably make 100 mil. Everybody wanted to, think about it, big cinema, big screen. Psychedelic imagery, heavy drug imagery. Yeah, this would have made a fortune. But for whatever reason, they didn't market it like that. And while because since we're coming to the end of the episode, obviously Roger Ebert reviewed this.
Come on. It bounced off him like a motherfucker, I can tell. Come on, hit me with it.
How many times have we talked about this cat just being... Anyway, 2.5 stars. Right.
Okay, not as bad as I thought he'd go. Okay, fair enough.
Right, 2.5 stars. How bad could The Fountain be? I selected one review, Varieties, because it was written from the premiere at Venice and was the first word on the film. I found that the one-time wunderkind, who had been overpraised for then hip, now dated use of pseudoscience in Pi, and for the visual excess he deployed in the grungy Requiem for a Dream, had now committed a film in which Hugh Jackman stars in 3 stories in different time frames and switches throughout somewhat abruptly between them, although we can parse which is going on when by paying attention to how much hair Jackman is sporting at any given time. I was relieved to find that pseudoscience and visual excess are now behind us in the cinema. But let's talk about hair. In the first story, Jackman portrays a conquistador. In the second, he is a modern scientist. And in the third, he is bald and floating through space inside a magic bubble. The reviewer who cannot pass that must be plumb passed out. And why trash Aronofsky's first two films? Just when I was trying to decide which I would write about as a great movie, he made Pie at 29. Requiem at 31, and now at 37, he was already a one-time wunderkind.
Why does he say that? Like, well, I was about to just say,
Yeah.
well,
I like how he.
But now you made this third film.
I know he's
Right.
what he's doing is he's just reviewing another reviewer right
I
now.
know.
What do you think, Roger? I don't
How
care what you
lazy
think
is
about
this
the
guy?
other reviewer.
Why are you doing the slasher like courtesy of Naver Esports?
Is-
I'm hearing this.
What's
your opinion?
Is the film a success? Not for most people, no. I imagine they don't realize, for one thing, that it all takes place in the present, and there is only one real Hugh Jackman
Holy
character,
shit, you
Tommy.
actually got it.
The
Roger Ebert
conquistador
got it.
named Tomas is the hero of the novel his wife is writing, and the spaceman named Tom Creole is the hero of the novel's final chapter, which Tommy writes after his deathbed promise to his wife.
Maybe,
Creole-
maybe not. Possibly.
Creole is Spanish for I believe. Spanish is a language the conquistadors would speak, so he knows his history.
Oh,
And-
nailed that Spanish part. Yeah, I know. The people from Spain did speak
And
Spanish.
Tommy
You just
believes
nailed
that
it.
a
Spanish
cure will be
people.
found.
He thought that was so
instead.
genius when he wrote that. I
Yeah,
know.
the tree sharing the space bubble with Tom is the tree of life that Tomas was seeking in the early chapters, and the movie explains that the bubble is en route to the nebula he and Izzy see in the sky, which she would know and explain was believed by the Mayans to be the origin of life. I could go on like this, right? But I won't, as I have found somebody else who can explain it in more elegant
Oh,
detail.
bloody-
than
how
me.
lazy is this?
Yeah,
fucking
and then
one?
he literally links to this other guy's interpretation of it. But here we go. Can a typical audience member be expected to do the heavy parsing and figure all of it out? I doubt it. Most movies.
Why should art be difficult, guys? Roger Ebert asks himself.
You know,
Most
I know.
movies, you like to have them all passed before you buy the ticket. Did I have it figured out? It didn't take me long. And here was my thinking. Since there is not a single element in the film claiming that the same man is alive in all three time periods, he obviously isn't. There is a critical belief that you should not bring story elements to fiction that cannot be found there. The fictional identity of the first man is explained by the novel, in which Izzy would obviously visualize her own lover as the hero. The fictional nature of the third man is explained because, hey, people don't go floating through the cosmos inside a bubble while levitating and eating bark, even in the future.
This
There
man
are
has
more
no
things
imagination,
in
my
heaven and
God.
earth than are dreamed of in our philosophy, but not that. Stephen
By the
Hawking.
way, whoever wrote that line, you motherfucking hack, you bitch ass hack, that you dare take that part of Shakespeare and put it in
Yeah.
your. They need to do something
Right.
good with
I
it.
just-
Stick
I
it on
just- I
dog
just
shit.
lo- I
know.
just-
How dare you?
I just love how he's like, but not that.
So
I
hacky.
I accept all forms of science fiction except this one.
Except this one, yeah, no. Then he goes, Stephen Hawking will back me up on this.
What?
The film's
What a fucking appeal to authority
I know.
that is.
The film's
Stephen
central
Hawking.
section is unalloyed realism and generates the fantasy of the first and third. Since Izzy dies in it, magic isn't allowed. Fiction has set its rules. That said, I will concede the film is not a great success. Too many screens of blinding lights, too many transitions, abrupt changes of tone, and yet I believe we have not seen the real film. When a $75 million production goes into turnaround and is made for $35 million, elements get eliminated. When a film telling three stories and spanning thousands of years has a running time of 96 minutes, scenes must have been cut. There will someday be a director's cut of this movie, and that's the cut I want to see. That was Roger Ebert's review, a review of someone else's review, a review of why audience members are stupid, and then saying, I hope this gets a director's cut, which it never did because the director's cut is the cut. So he's done it again, guys.
Am I missing
2.5
something? Even
stars.
though, look, I would watch more of some of these aspects. I also think the script's really tight. Like, I didn't feel like there was some
No,
like, well,
complete
there's a missing scene here that would have explained what happened. Like, no,
Complete
I
nonsense.
thought they
There
nailed
is
it.
actually
Yeah.
no fat on this movie at all by necessity, because obviously, given the ponderous nature of the topics it's covering, you can't go down a rabbit hole fucking mid movie on that stuff. Also, as well, the movie is visual and audio callbacks over and over and over again, anchoring you to the main story. which again is an essential part of how the story is told and why the movie succeeds as a storytelling device. What, like Roger Ebert saying that there's probably a better cut of this movie? Like, what's that? Who reviews a movie
Also,
imagining a fucking future director's cut?
I also just don't feel like I need more of any of the stories.
No,
I feel like
perfect.
it's all so neatly, tied up. And I think that Aronofsky, whatever his initial vision of this, when we hear things like it would have featured these giant battle sequences, I guess between the Mayans and the Conquistadors, that's what I'm assuming. And it's like, do we need that?
It doesn't even need
no.
that. It doesn't need that.
In a way, him taking a break and this film falling apart and him having to reevaluate it may have made it a better piece of art in the end, frankly.
By the way, even the little bit, look, I actually think the best parts of the Conquistador is just the parts in Spain, but even the part where he's in like the New World, even that's genius. Like the way, like he knows it's a trap, but he has to go in anyway. By the way, when they beat him and grab him, why don't they just kill him? Because it's part of the sacrifices in it. Like he thinks he's going to find the truth. Yeah, you are, mate. They're sacrificing you to be the fucking guy who's like, because remember, a lot of those like Mesoamerican myths have this idea that their original god of as far as their culture was some white man for some bizarre reason. So it's almost even that idea of like you're going to go up and then you get sacrificed to yourself for our life or something. You don't need any more than that. What scene were you missing in that part? And if anything, I actually think more scenes in the sort of end of the story futuristic aspect would actually just complicate the film for people who didn't get that aspect. I thought the fact that it was quite tight and it's all memories of things. It also ties into the idea like that when someone's gone, you just keep running through the same thoughts in your head, etc. I thought it was brilliant.
It was also tied into scholarship that was happening at the time in terms of Mayan research. So something that I found very interesting, by the way, is that a lot of the discoveries that I'm talking about the representation of the stars versus the mythology and in Mayan art, all of this was happening in the early 90s. And there was a particular scholar whose name is Linda Sheely, and I really like her. She wrote a lot of really interesting books about these topics, talking about how mythology and art literally in Mayan culture applied to astronomical phenomenons. But she actually died in 1998 of cancer herself. And so Aronofsky was definitely reading some of these texts during this time period because you just wouldn't get this kind of Mayan connection to the stars otherwise. And so I do wonder if her death of cancer also was another factor in playing into this, because she was kind of one of the leading scholars at the time, and he probably was very aware of her, and he probably knew she died of cancer. So very weird parallels to real life scholarship that was going on. But this was a very, I would think, academically hot topic in the world of anthropology in like the mid 90s into late 90s. So fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, look, just to start putting a pin in it, for me, like, I think there's a very strong argument that this is Aronofsky's best film. I think in terms of what it does artistically, like even if for some reason you don't fuck with the narrative and you don't fuck with the performance, and by the way, the narrative, the movie, bizarrely, that this always reminds me of is Adaptation, because of the multiple storylines, one of them being fictional. You're watching it kind of being adapted in real time from the perspective of the person that's reading the book. It does have some similarities to that. So I think narratively it's very strong. But whatever. Some people don't fuck with it. Interestingly enough, in the comic, they don't even have future space Tom. It's just the two timelines, I think. I don't think they have the future dude in there. But anyway, I think narratively it's really good. But even if you didn't fuck with all of that, putting this on a big screen in fucking 4K is fucking the movie
really
looks
good
insane.
looking.
It looks insane. Like, you cannot, like, if you are not taken aback by how good this movie looks, and all of it, and like I said, not a stitch of wonky CGI.
It's not even just like the visuals. It's that you can feel it. Like, I can feel my hand touching those hairs on the tree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's it's a really bizarre, like, sensory experience.
Well, again, because it's doing that fucking ASMR trick in the audio, right? Where it's like, if you listen to it on, again, I got surround sound, you can actually hear breath laid under the music. And so you recognize that sound, or obviously, and then again, sounds huge in this movie, and it's like as a piece of art, this is Aronofsky's masterpiece for sure. I mean, look, The Wrestler, it's easier to follow, maybe more relatable. You know what I mean? Like beat up old guy getting one last chance.
Yeah, but this is
redemption.
significantly more
Story.
profound.
Yeah, exactly. But
Like the topic, it's harder to process.
yeah, this is about the idea of existence, life, death. This is the big shit, guys. This isn't Mickey Rourke sleeping in a car. This is fucking Space Tom flying through space in a bubble, eating bark from the tree of life. Like, if you can't fuck with that, then yeah, obviously you're in for a bad time. But it does blow me away how many people either don't get the movie, don't like the movie, haven't seen the movie, would never watch it again. It's like so fucking. It's one of the most unfairly maligned movies. Probably
It's also one of the
time.
most eminently rewatchable movies.
Agreed.
Because
Always a new detail.
There's always something new. It's always a just beautiful experience, just as a vibe. And also, it's only 96 minutes long. It's not even a big commitment of time.
like Duncan says, they could have done that thing. Sometimes when movies are swinging for the fences trying to be artistic, when they're really, really fucking trying, and you just have these long takes, and yeah, they look good and all that, but you are sort of thinking like, this is 15 seconds of just, does that need to be there? Not really. This movie, every shot is a painting. Every shot is in service of the story, in service of the film as a piece of art.
All the transitions are in service of that. I mean,
yeah.
she literally Izzy appears on the space tree, gets the seed, and hands it from the future into the present Tom. I mean, there's just really cool, nuanced shots like that. And then that gets planted at her grave. And that theoretically is the tree that he's taking to space, to the nebula in the future, right? So everything is just like constantly
Roger Ebert
cycling.
saying there are abrupt changes of tone is fucking beyond stupid. The movie is so totally consistent.
It's
such a wild take.
He makes it sound like you have one scene
Yeah.
where someone's died from cancer, and the next scene it's like whack whack, hot dogs are up. Like there's nothing like that in this film. Like
Just vaudeville.
Weird take.
Yeah,
it's not the end of Spartacus where they're like having a humor scene while somebody's dying on a cross,
Yeah, crazy. So I mean, obviously, I'll let Duncan have the last word because I know how much he reveres the movie. But for me, this is a movie that, like, when it came up as a suggestion to watch, I was like, oh, cool, I get to fucking watch that again. For me now, at my age, at this time of life, and having lost a few people, there is some sort of comfort to not getting Jesus or nothing, but like just there is some sort of comfort to thinking about what it is to how, like, as she says, like death itself can be an experience, a process of creation. Yeah and that's something to think about. Obviously we're all going to the same place.
But by the way, I will point this out about Roger Ebert, and I find it extremely weird that he doesn't mention this in his review. He is a man who had cancer himself.
Maybe that's why it was one of these.
And literally, by the way, The Fountain came out in 2006. That was the year he had his surgery to remove part of his jaw because of cancer, which is why I imagine he did not get around to writing this review until 2007.
That's why he didn't like this movie, because he was scared his surgeon would see this and give up trying to find a revolutionary new cure just to kill him, Roger Ebert, who must stay alive and watch every movie that's ever made. And so he was really worried they'd come to peace with the idea of death and that he'd have to move on and no longer.
Yeah, his oncologist was called Tom, and it just fucking freaked him out.
I'm just really wondering. And by the way, he did eventually die of this cancer. He died of cancer.
Right? Well, I mean, there's a down note to everyone's life.
So my point is
I like to think about space Ebert.
If you had been struggling with cancer and had life-altering surgery as a result of this cancer when this movie came out, and you're writing a review about the idea of confronting death and accepting it via the vehicle of cancer, Wouldn't you write about that in your review? Is he a human being? Like, I just don't
I think it would be
understand.
the ultimate example to essentially do your own like magnum opus review that contains your
Exactly.
own life and experience and mortality, and in doing so, you would actually process this film. No, it's mad, innit? I know what you mean.
Yeah.
If there was ever a layup Roger, come on, mate.
like-
And you were like, tell
You
you
got
what,
nothing out of this?
let's see what someone else wrote about it, if I agree with that or not. Anyway, can I have the money? Like, what the fuck? You just gave up at this point, mate. What the fuck?
Basically, his Shabalba is like where fucking subtext goes to die. It's the end. It's the end of subtext and imagination.
I just don't understand how you could write this review and have nothing about your own experience of mortality that you have recently encountered.
It's the idea, Monty. Remember, you always have to keep this in the back of your mind to never, ever really give him a break. Because the second you realize he doesn't fuck with all these elements of the movie, it doesn't touch him deeply, then remember, he goes, oh, it's a new film, 500 Days of Summer. Let me sit down and watch
Four
this.
stars.
It's true. It's
4 stars out of 4.
Yeah, like
this fucking bang.
he was moved. He was more moved
nuts,
by
innit?
500 Days
So
of
nuts.
Summer than he was by The
Mate,
Fountain.
I'm thinking of all the great scenes. He's watching that one. You're like, the Smiths? Yeah. Like, fuck me. 4 stars out of 4. There's no subtext there, gentlemen. The Smiths, they're just a good band from the 80s. Like, fuck you, Roger Ebert. No, my problem is, as I say, first of all, I actually find this is a movie that my experience, I agree with Richard, changed from when I first saw it. When I first saw it, I mainly enjoyed it for the, like, wow, this director's really gotten a chance to play with all, like, fucking insane imagery. You've got, I'm also interested in things like psychedelics and the idea you can have these out there experiences. Also, like, it is really interesting, the like meta commentary that you're playing with on life, the thematic elements where you're using story and mythology in order to like help process it. But now when I look back, now there's I agree with Richard, a lot of them nuances are what I enjoy the most. It's almost Proustian in terms of how many like little bits are almost like some real experience you've had in life yourself put on camera though, and in such that's why the idea his parents went through this makes a lot more sense to me. The idea he already had some experiences of these like moments that you have in life where it's just an awkward moment, but because the person's dying and you can't do anything about it, what do you just sit there and enjoy your time? Do you distract them? There's so many things that you think about in this moment. And then also for me, I just find that just the way, as I say, the story weaves itself together as it goes through, I think it's masterful. And then the ending, I think it's a mega payoff. I think it's fucking unbelievable on all parts, like the one where he goes into the tree in the Conquistador story, the part in the future space part where the nebula explodes or whatever. It's fucking sick. The way it ties with the theme tune's unbelievable. I can't believe people genuinely can't get something out of this film.
Also, the funny thing is that everybody has actually seen a piece of this film, because one of the most common reaction gifs on the internet these days is a picture of Hugh Jackman with his beard and his face, the glow,
right.
where he's going,
yeah, you're right.
He's in awe of the sky.
Right.
And people use that when they're in awe or like seeing glory or something. And that's from this movie. And nobody knows that it's from this movie. Nobody knows that. They just use it all the time.
True.
If people are posting that fucking gif when someone like drops 30 in a game of Counter-Strike or something.
Yeah, I know. Oh, it's like, oh, they announced a new Zelda game.
I'm ready.
I know. This guy's like experience transcendent awe at the end of human experience. Oh, fucking new Zelda's coming out soon.
But you all have seen it. That's my point, is nobody knows that it's from this movie because nobody has seen this movie, but you all have seen that moment in a reaction gif. Great reaction gif, by the way.
It's also why the other one that triggers me is the one of fucking, I can't remember his name now, that guy from fucking The Wire where he does that like, and then that's how you know no one watches The Wire. How do you not know that? Yeah, Weeber, there you go. When he's that one. Because that's even a badass scene in The Wire, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
We actually should just do a separate video about all of the reaction gifs and where they're from. Because also, by the way, guys, speaking of reaction gifs, our last arc, you know, the one of the guy, the blonde guy with the beard is like nodding in the forest and it's zooming it up. That's Robert Redford.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like him because he has a beard, but it is.
Yeah, the little manly nod.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You don't need to fucking have a conversation, pussy. Just nod. Nod and move on. There you go.
But yeah, so, you know, absolute banger of a film. Hopefully people take from it.
Great way to start this arc, Hidden Gems. Yeah. I think there's a real chance people will super fuck with this movie. You might not, but if you are, you're welcome. This is a banger.
Yeah.
And we'll do The Green Knight next week, guys, which is another film that unfortunately coincides with my interest in Arthurian romance.
Anyway,
Yeah, buckle
similar
up.
themes as well. Think about it like mortality,
Yeah.
the idea of like, oh, it's just literal. Did that literally happen? Mythology tying into a story. There's actually there's
There's
segue
some good
point
overlap.
there for
There's some
this.
good
Yeah.
overlap for sure.
Yeah, and like we said in a previous episode, I think it's one of the very few films that took kind of a modern interpretation of that story and uses that in a very cool way, as opposed to it just kind of denigrating the original literature or mythology. It really does cause a lot of reflection. So also, there's time for you to read The Green Knight because it's incredibly short. And so if you are looking for something to read, first off, The Green Knight is very short and it's also a Christmas story. So, you know, if it's around Christmas time, great time to read
This
that.
is where you plug your fucking audiobook version of it that you've clearly recorded.
I have not. Maybe I should, though.
Yeah, get on it. Last Free Nation audiobooks.
Also, that, you know, that would have been The Green Knight would have actually been a sneaky Christmas movie because it takes place during the feasting around Christmas.
I wouldn't let you pass that. That would have been heavily. You're not doing that for Christmas. You would have been vetoed immediately.
All right, guys, that'll do it. We'll be back next week for The Green Knight. See you then.